Hi everyone, I'm nehabhuchar, CEO of Atom11, and welcome to AdVantage with Atom11. This is where we talk about all things Amazon. Now, I've been in the Amazon space for about 6+ years, and I've met with about 300 to 400 different brands, agencies. And although I'm in the PPC side of things, but I can't help but hear or listen to sellers about the kind of problems that they face on Amazon. And these problems, they range from anything from Amazon changed my category, they changed my pricing. Amazon just does a lot of stuff, right? I don't have answers to all of those. And so I actually went up to my favorite go-to person when it comes to what do I do when Amazon does something to my account. And so my next guest is going to be someone who has actually lived this experience for a long time and now is pretty much an expert in the same. So without further ado, I'm going to call Ben Smith. Hi,
Hello,
Ben.
hello. Hey, Neha. Thanks so much for having me on the show today. Appreciate it.
Pleasure is all mine. I think I am so happy that you're here today because I have I already have a list of questions that I'm going to ask you today. So I'm so
Nice.
happy. A lot
Yeah,
of times I come across questions that I don't have answers to, and I know you do. But before we start,
I hope so.
I would love for you to just give a very quick intro, and then we're going to get deep into my questions.
Yeah. First off, thank you for that awesome intro. That was great. And I think your show, you normally are having more conversations around the advertising piece in terms of Amazon. And to be honest, that makes sense because everyone loves the idea of growing revenue, profits, blah, blah, blah. And most of that comes back to, running advertising campaigns that work really, really well. No one really likes to talk about all the other million things that have to get done to manage and run and keep your account healthy and all that stuff. And that's where I've seen a lot of my experience over the last couple of years. But so yeah, my name is Ben Smith. I mean, I've been in the Amazon e-commerce space for about 8 years. And I've kind of worked and seen just about all the different angles, more or less. I know there's always more out there, but I've worked in-house for two brands. So my kind of first foray was I actually worked for, at the time, one of the top 5,000 largest Amazon resellers. So we were just doing the classic kind of like online arbitrage, retail arbitrage model. And this was maybe in 2018 or something like that. Worked for another in-house brand. And then I worked for a full service Amazon agency for, I think it was 2.5 years. Did some freelance work in between. And then most recently I was at Seller Candy. And yeah, I also am a seller. So I've been selling kind of in all the different models all the way through, which we can talk about too, if it goes there today.
Wow. So you've been there, done that in pretty much every aspect.
I've seen a lot. I've seen a
Yeah.
lot. I've also taught, and the cool thing, and what I really like about the different roles that I've had is I've also gotten to talk to, I think, like you said, probably talked to like 300 brands in the last 18 months, including some agencies and aggregators and service providers. And, just hearing about the different types of products and problems and challenges that all of them have. And also the really weird things that people sell. There are a lot of weird things that I had no idea were a thing. So anyway,
Hey, tell me a little bit about those. What are those weird
uh,
things?
I talked to a guy at some point who was selling a cat toothbrush, which to be honest, I didn't look at the product, so I don't know how it's different than a human toothbrush or a dog toothbrush, but I thought that was interesting and I'd never thought about it. I obviously don't own cats. Honestly, that's the one that's coming to my mind right now. And I'm just thinking about
Wow.
a bunch of problems that people have had.
I'm I'm going to ask a couple of people who have cats whether this is even a problem statement. But I'm sure
Okay,
if he's
yeah,
selling
let me know.
one, love it. Um, I want to understand. So you've been in the space for a long time now. I think I don't even know if you would remember, the answer to the next question that I'm going to ask because it's been so long. But what got you into Amazon?
Yeah.
How did you get into this jungle of Amazon?
I do remember it very well. So quick backstory is, so after college, unlike most of my friends who kind of either were interning and then had like a job already set up for them, or, if they had a clear path, like going and becoming an accountant or going on to grad school. I graduated and I was kind of like, okay, what am I doing next? I ended up starting a job doing door-to-door sales. And so I was, just as you would imagine, a traveling door-to-door salesman. I spent 2 years kind of all over the US. So I got to live and see a bunch of different cities. And it was a very challenging job. It was also like, a lot of high pressure kind of sales stuff. And I really learned like sales techniques. But during that time, like essentially, I'm working 6 days a week where I get dropped off in a neighborhood maybe at 10 a.m. and I'm knocking doors till 8, 9, sometimes 10 p.m. So long days. And it was challenging and rewarding. I mean, I had cops called on me, whatever, all kinds of crazy stuff. But during that time, during the day, there's not so many people home. I was selling alarm systems, by the way. But so during the day, like I'm in residential neighborhoods. During the day, obviously, people are at work or out and about. So there's not as many people to talk to. Sometimes you might walk from a house all the way to the other side of your area. And during that time, I put on podcasts. And the first thing I found was, I think it was Scott Volker's podcast, who he was always talking about the garlic press. I don't know if that was him that originated that, concept or everyone else. But anyway, I just got really, really into that. And the reason I think it was really appealing to me, I mean, I've also read the 4 Hour Work Week. So, which, kind of, I don't want to say poisoned my mind, but it like really stuck with me and was like almost too much. So I think that what I realized, the reason I was attracted to the stuff I was hearing on that podcast is I realized with door-to-door sales, for example, I can only knock so many doors in a day, right? But how do I do this at scale in a sense? And to me, that was like, wow, if I put a product on Amazon on the internet, it's essentially I could potentially knock on thousands or millions of people's door every day. And so that was kind of what was really appealing to me. And the more I kind of learned, and I didn't listen to music for like 5 years. I just listened to podcasts mostly about Amazon stuff during that time. So pretty much that was what kind of got me interested. And then after I stopped doing that door-to-door sales job, I ended up getting a job with the company I mentioned at the beginning of this, which was at the time, top 5,000 largest Amazon reseller or whatever. So we would buy like liquidated lots of all kinds of random goods. And then I literally just did the most basic job of like picking, packing, and creating shipping plans, shipping stuff in, and dealing with some of the other like administrative stuff. So that was kind of like my first foray into it. And then I also at that time started selling on eBay because we had some stuff that we could not sell on Amazon. For example, Nike shoes. We were gated and couldn't sell that. So we'd sell those on eBay, and I've also sold on Etsy, and then I started my own Amazon business, and that's how it kind of went. So yeah.
And what did you sell?
So I've done a bunch. So okay, so in terms of my Amazon business like journey, so I think like maybe 2 years after I was working at that company, I started my first private label product, which at the time this was very much so, oh, you only need $500 to start, and you can buy, units off AliExpress first, and then send them directly in, and then buy a bigger quantity. And I at the time I found a really good, I think I was either using Helium 10 or Jungle Scout, but I found like a 10 out of 10 opportunity score on Amazon. It was I can tell you what it is. It was webcam covers. I actually still have one of my units on here, and I think I have one unit left in this desk behind me. But
you the ones you put on laptops, and so that it covers the.
Yeah, like this is my old unit. Oh, it's a little blurry, but anyway, okay, you can't see it. But that at the time, that was like there were not very many sellers at all, and it was like an ideal opportunity. So I pretty much pulled the trigger and ordered, I think, like $500 worth of inventory. Not a ton at the time, though. To me, I was broke, and it was a ton of money. And by the time they landed at Amazon, it was like horribly saturated. Within that like 1.5 months from order research and finding that to ordering and getting them in, it was like so saturated. And it's a really low price product. I think I was selling this like one unit for $7.99, and there were already 100 sellers selling 3 units per pack for the same price. So fortunately, I ended up liquidating selling through all my goods. But it was definitely one of those where it's like, okay, that was a flop. Let's move on. So, and then after that, I haven't actually gone and done more private label products for myself, but I started getting into the print on demand space, which, I have Merch by Amazon was kind of a thing that I got really into. And then now more so, I guess, KDP and writing books. That's kind of one of my passion projects on the side. So, and then I've done like resale and wholesale and online arbitrage in between. And even driving, sorry, I know I'm rambling here, but I would also even drive and go around. And I know a lot of people have done this, but I would literally every weekend go and hit up as many garage sales as I could and try to get books. Books were my thing because you'd find like one book textbook on that weekend and it would be like, okay, that made me $100. You know what I mean? And someone sold it for
Yeah.
$1. So that was like kind of those were all the different pieces of what I was doing.
Wow, that's a lot of experience. And I think I read a lot about, how, for example, there are a couple of influencers in the space who talk about how, competitive some of the spaces are and how difficult it is to even liquidate, right? So I don't know if you were lucky enough to be able to liquidate in a saturated space
Yeah,
without advertising.
I just got lucky. Yeah, back then I was so afraid of the idea of running ads for anything. I just was like, I just want organic sales, and so I don't think I even ran PPC at all. But I ended up,
Wow,
I think I dropped the price like by $2, and I was breaking even. So
got it.
I sold through, and I maybe lost $100.
Mhm.
It wasn't a
Okay.
huge loss for me, and it was a great like learning lesson and experience too.
I'm sure. That's amazing. And how did you get into seller candy? Because
Yeah.
that's a very different space in itself. And I'm not sure if there are other players in that space, but I
Hmm.
would love to know how you got into it, and what is even competition for seller candy? Is there even
Yeah.
one?
Oh, that's a good question. So my last role that I had for the past 2.5-ish years was with a company called Seller Candy. So I'm just saying this for anyone who doesn't know of them. Great company. I really liked the product and service. So I actually knew the founder John from he had run the full service Amazon agency. I had worked with maybe 2.5, 3 years before, and he had sold it to another agency. And I ended up going with that agency and the new owner, and pretty much stayed there for a while. During the time that I was there, John actually went and started Seller Candy. And we ended up like catching up, like, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years later. And he was telling me a little bit about the idea. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing, because I knew the pain points and
Yeah.
I really liked the model of it. So essentially, what Seller Candy did and does is they have a team of people that are mostly based in the Philippines, but ex Amazon seller support staff, and then they obviously train and augment their skills internally. And then on a monthly subscription model, Amazon sellers can pay to pretty much gain access and leverage that team. So rather than having to build your own in-house team or what have you, you have a team there, right? That you don't have to deal with any of the training or the headache or the firing of freelancers and that kind of thing. So I was there for about 2.5 years. I had a bunch of different hats that I wore, but like my title was a mouthful. It was head of sales, partnerships, and marketing. So I was on all like the front end stuff. Like I got on a ton of calls with sellers, agencies, aggregators, would hear all their problems. I always joked I should bring an Amazon therapist with me to these. And I'm sure you can probably relate, maybe an Amazon
I can.
advertising therapist. And yeah, anyway, I mean, that's kind of how I got there. And I'm happy to unpack any of that if you have follow-up questions.
Yeah, for sure. And are there other companies like Seller Candy in the space?
Their model is pretty unique. There are some people that are doing somewhat similar things. Like I would say more so, there's people that do free, like I don't want to say freelance, one-off project type work. For example, like the example I'll just give is Riverbend Consulting. They
Okay, okay.
do. And I've never worked there, no affiliation or anything, but we would refer people to them, and I've heard great things about those guys too. But like they specialize in doing account reinstatements and dealing with
Got
products
it.
that have got taken down and that kind of thing, is like a one-off appeal based thing. I think there's similar kind of companies for maybe different parts of the business. Seller Candy is somewhat unique, and I think part of that goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of this, which is this is the unsexy side of Amazon. Everyone
Yeah.
else that's starting a business to support Amazon sellers is like, hey, I want to start an agency because I can make money from a retainer plus maybe advertising, and that's way more exciting. No one really wants to deal with kind of the other stuff, and it's
Yeah.
complicated. So we kind
Yeah.
of had that moat around that business, I think.
That's lovely. Now, I want to dig a little deeper into that. So, from your experience at Seller Candy, what do you think are the kind of problems that sellers would come to Seller Candy for? What are the
Yeah.
most common ones that you would experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I mean, every call is different and everyone is different. But the first thing I want to say is I would talk to so many sellers that would like get on the call freaking out. They have some issue, blah blah blah. And the amount of times that the person I talked to on the other end, thought that their problem was like a one in a million, so
Mhm.
unique, it's never happened before to anyone else. Which I understand. Like I have the context because I've been talking to so many sellers, but like if you're a brand owner, you're probably maybe just networking with a few other people. And so that's one thing I just want to call out, because if you are listening to this and maybe you have a certain problem or whatnot, there's probably many
Yeah.
people out there who have seen that and experienced it before and have solved that issue. So that's just one thing to call out. But in terms of like some high level stuff, we would see that the biggest kind of categories, I suppose, for that people were having issues or ongoing stuff with were account health related problems, and then anything kind of related to catalog management. So I'm talking like updating your listing. Like, hey, we tried to manually update our listing. We tried the flat file. It's not working. Can you help us? Oh, our listing is search suppressed. We're having problems, merging this child ASIN in this one. Those sort of things. And especially because, when I 5 or 6 years ago, it was so much easier to make an update to a listing. You could, go in, click edit in Seller Central and update a bullet or a title, and then 15 minutes later it's pushed through. And then
Yeah.
over the years, that's not really the case. Oftentimes you have to use flat files, or even
Yeah.
in a lot of cases do a delete relist. So deleting
Yeah.
the ASIN and then actually relisting it to kind of get it to refresh. So anyway.
Wow. I have heard problems like Amazon changed my category, and I've seen that that actually ends up impacting revenue. And I'm sure that there are hundreds of, like the ones that you mentioned too. These are ones that actually impact revenue directly. So, very rightly said, this is the unsexy part of the selling on Amazon, and I think Sarah Candy is doing it pretty well. My next question to you is, now that you know that these are the biggest problems that sellers face when they're running an Amazon business, what do you think is a good way to go about as next steps? One, either they, how can they build a high performing team
Sure.
that can, maneuver or navigate through these challenges, or maybe use new age tools which can help them in navigating through these. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So I guess just to take it, before I answer that directly, I'm going to kind of say the step that I would do first, and that is, and I talked a lot about this, in my days at Seller Candy as well, but is to the first thing you kind of that I would recommend doing is, essentially a current state analysis. So like finding out where you're actually at now, and this can be done like in depending how big your org is and how much time you want to spend on it. If your brand is just you and you've only been selling for a year and have 5 SKUs, you can probably do this in like a half hour or an hour. Maybe if you have 5,000 SKUs and a 20-person team, it's going to take a day or something. But setting aside just, an hour a day, something on the weekend, and just stopping and getting out a notepad or Notion or whatever, and essentially analyzing where you're at now. And so I just wrote down like a couple things. Like normally that's going to look like, how is my account actually performing? How are my ads performing? Do I have a lot of account health issues? Are my listings fully optimized? Am I good about inventory management? Those sorts of things. And then also writing down, what your goals are. Like, what do I want to achieve in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months or what have you? I want to do 10 new product launches, or I don't want to grow my catalog, but I really want to dial in this PPC or what have you. And essentially write all the different things down that you can think of and kind of where they're at, like, so their current state. And the one other thing I like to say is write down the things that you hate doing. For example, like I don't like personally dealing with any of the things related to like accounting or, for the finance stuff. Like that's just not really my world. And so that would be something I'd be like, okay, I need to outsource or find a solution for that. Right. And the last piece there is I also say try to rank these after you kind of written everything out, which is why ideal to do it on a computer or something, but rank them in order of what's going to have the biggest impact if it's fixed or improved or what have you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of step one to me. And then the second step is knowing, essentially what options are out there in terms of supports. And I'm going to come back to that question that you asked. And that's just to summarize them real quick. Essentially, you can do everything yourself, and there's different times and use cases for all of these, by the way, but especially early days, you're probably doing a lot of stuff yourself.
Thank you.
I'm sure you probably did. I don't know. I mean, I know you had a co-founder at Atom11, but probably somewhat similar. So do it yourself. Then kind of, I think like the next tier up is getting like freelancers or contractors or, kind of those one-off solutions or maybe temporary work or what have you. And then you go up to the next tier and you kind of have a few different options, which is you can build an in-house team, you can get an agency, and there can be different forms of agencies, right? Like a PPC only agency or a full service agency. Or you can look to service providers. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, in my experience, people were seeing that they wanted a mix of that kind of stuff. Like maybe they have one person in house, plus they have a designer that they use for certain projects, and then maybe they have an agency that handles all their PPC, and then they have a couple different service providers. Sorry, I can't talk today. Like Atom11 for PPC, or Seller Board for analytics
Yeah.
and some of that stuff. So knowing those, and there's pros and cons to all of those, which I mean I can dig into as well. But that would be kind of the next step, and then I would just say from there, now that you know the different options, you know kind of your current state and where your goals, where you want to go next, then you can kind of prioritize these things into like what's the most pressing and what will make the biggest impact. And I just suggest like you kind of can put together a matrix, like an impact versus the impact business versus like the time and cost,
Effort.
right?
Mm.
Because obviously you want to try to pick the things that are huge impact and ideally lowest cost or time investment first, and then work from there. And that gives you a real good starting point to say, okay, I know where I'm at. Maybe I have $2,500 a month to spend on software and an agency or a team
Yeah.
member, blah, blah, blah. And that kind of serves as, okay, now I know what my next steps might look like.
Um, Once they have this, what kind of support do they have? Let's say, we can start with, if there's a team which is doing everything in house, or if the founder is doing everything on their own, what
Sure.
kind of support do they have, which is existing in the industry today, that they can use to either speed up this process of, either its audits, or is it the operational issues that come in, either of those, to help them navigate through that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would talk first. I would just want to say I would talk to a lot of, we all start Amazon accounts and businesses for different reasons, but I found that a lot of people, at least in previous years, they're starting them because they want to, it's a great model that you can build
Mhm.
off of. Like in theory, and it's changed a little bit, but like you send your product to Amazon FBA, and like they handle most of the customer service. And yes, there is, as you grow, there is a lot of like this weird legwork and things that do have to be done. So it's not passive income, but that's kind of what a lot of people, the mindset that I see often. I think that's changing a little bit. But the reason I bring that up is because I found that a lot of the owners or co-owners, being in the trenches at first and even ongoing is great because you get to know, get to get a grasp of all the different things. Like I know how to do flat files because I had to do them so many times. I know how to do, advertising to an extent, not like you guys, but I do know it to an extent. I know how to open cases, ask for reimbursements, the reports. Now my knowledge is not as, I'm not doing that much in the day-to-day stuff anymore, but because I have that high level context, it's super helpful. The
Yeah.
trap that most of those people fall into is that they don't know when to release that stuff to free up their time so that they can work on sourcing new products, or you know what I mean. And I feel like I talked to a lot of business owners that were like trying to kind of still do all the things, and they probably should have moved on and outsourced some of them maybe 6 months or a year ago. So anyway, that's just one kind of call out. But I guess in terms of support, one of the biggest challenges that I realized in the space is Amazon has tons of help, support documentation and all of that stuff, which is what tells us the ideal outcome. And so, if you search like how to fix my listing suppression, there's probably going to be a support document on it that's probably going to tell you something, and that's going to work 50% of the time, right? The other 50% of the time, though, it's like, well, that didn't work. So now how do I troubleshoot? Oh, no, I have to open a support ticket with Amazon. Or you might go to like Google or YouTube or something and just start asking questions. And then there's information overload, right? There's so many people and blogs and a lot of really good people, and there's also a lot of garbage out there. So it can be really overwhelming, and it becomes out of date really fast. And so that's why I think like now more than ever, you have to have experts either in your in-house team or in your realm. Like you have to have people that you're paying to stay on like the forefront of everything happening with Amazon, because it does change so fast. But yeah, so I guess that's one thing, and that's also a reason that I think like again, there's pros and cons to each one of those different kind of options that I talked about. But for example, using an agency, I am biased in the sense that I worked, for an agency, but I do think that using like an agency, for example, is a great idea depending on where you're at in your journey, because you're paying those people to, and not only to know everything that's going on, and they're in the weeds every single day, but they're also working on multiple different accounts normally. So they have a lot more exposure than you do as an individual, Amazon seller, to see how, we fixed this issue over here for this brand the same way. I think we can use that strategy or skill to fix it with you guys. So those kind of things, that kind of collective knowledge, I think is really hard or takes a really long time to build with, an in-house team. And freelancers, it's kind of, that's the downside, I would say, of freelancers is, they're really good at what they do, but then what happens when that weird nuanced problem comes up and they don't know it? Now you have to go get another freelancer or, what have you. And then there's other people, right? Like service providers. So, like Atom11, and then I've had Product Haus. We actually have an Amazon chatbot that we've built to kind of serve this purpose, which that's the reason that I built it. Is I was always overwhelmed with information overload. So we actually built this to help support sellers so they can come on there and actually ask questions and get answers. It is in beta, so it is, sometimes it does not spit out the most correct thing, but it is pretty good most of the time. And then, and that's the cool thing too, is when you leverage these service providers and whatnot, same deal as kind of working with an agency. They have domain expertise in their area, right? Like, Amazon advertising better than probably 99% of the people out there, right? Because you've seen so much, you worked internally at Amazon, all that good stuff. So anyway, those are just some thoughts on that.
That is brand new information for so many sellers out there. There is a tool that they can go to, and this is probably the first time that a tool like this has been built, right? So there is a tool out there for which they can, or to which they can actually turn to without having to go through contact centers or even seller support tickets. Before going to all of that, they can actually turn to a chat GPT for Amazon sellers, kind of an interface, and get answers which they would have taken hours to gather from Google, for example, right? So
Yeah.
that's amazing. And I hadn't heard of any such tool before, but would love to know what led you to start, or, because you'd been at Seller Candy, what led you to think of building a chatbot for seller issues or
Yeah.
for seller support?
No, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I guess, it's a lot of I was really getting into AI, even before ChatGPT was out. Like, I was messing around with Jasper. I think they renamed themselves to Jarvis, but
Yeah.
AI a while back for like pieces of blog content and some other stuff. And then obviously when ChatGPT came out, and Claude and Gemini, I started doing a lot more. I was using ChatGPT at the time quite a bit to help me with, I don't know, just various parts of my day-to-day workflow. So that's one thing I just want to mention, and then the second one is, I guess, I touched on it already, but information overwhelm.
Yeah.
Like, it's really hard when you're trying to get something resolved quickly, and you just want to know, like, maybe the step by step. And so, in this, again, the support documentation is great, but normally you're going to accompany that by going to YouTube and trying to find something else. And it might take you sifting through 3 or 4 or 5 videos to find one that's actually kind of pertinent to what you're asking about, to get like something, oh, this strategy actually worked for this really tricky issue. And so that was something that I was always aware of. And and I guess things are changing super fast. It's hard to keep up. So obviously finding, again, the content's not always fresh to what you're dealing with now. And so that kind of led me to start Product Haus, which is the name of the company, and our chatbot. I guess I don't really have a name for it other than Product Haus AI chatbot. There we go. I just made that up now. Maybe I should think of something more creative, but I was already doing some freelance work, and I've done freelance work and kind of account management and manage ad campaigns for Amazon sellers, all throughout my career. And so for me, this was just like, I had that experience, and based on kind of those other things, the information overall and the things I've faced, and from talking to sellers, I know they face, I was just like, how could I build a free chatbot to kind of serve that purpose? So yeah, we ended up finding a great platform to do it. Trained it on 1 million+ characters, and we're working on so we essentially trained it on all of the Amazon seller support documentation, as like a base. But as we just talked about, that's normally only going to get you maybe like 50% of the way there. And so beyond that, we've also, because I know a lot of the people in the content in the industry that are actually reputable and that it works really, really well. We've utilized that stuff in some of the resources out there and our own experiences and actually trained the chatbot on that stuff as well. So beyond the basic ideal scenario that seller support documentation would give you, we also have included, hey, but if this doesn't work, well, then maybe you need to do a full delete relist of your, you know what I mean? Like the next steps for kind
Wow.
of what we've actually seen. Now, again, I said, it is not perfect. So, but we are working on a lot more stuff there. And the last thing I'll say about it is we are trying to now build out kind of the model so that we automatically include the updates from like the latest news features or updates from Amazon in a much more concise timeline. So, but that's a bigger project. Anyway, so it's been
That's amazing. I mean, Amazon is such a jungle, right? Like half the time it's hard to just know what's going on, and people usually have to follow updates. They have, they have alerts or whatever they do to ensure that they are in the know of what is going on in Amazon. And you are saying that there is this chatbot that you guys are building, which is in beta, which can actually help you with all of this information at the click of a button. Is this free, or are you going to be charging for it?
Yeah, it's free, and it's not something that is like there's no roadmap to start charging for it. To be honest, it was a fun project, and then now it's just been something that, like, to be honest, I use it like, and that's part of the reason I built it too, is like honestly so that I could just go ask it questions quickly and be like, oh, okay, that's right, that's how I do this thing. You know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, no, it's free. You can go check it out now. I mean, it's available now, and hopefully it'll be improved a ton over time. So yeah, but it's been
Wow,
fun
you should
building.
give me the link.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
definitely will. It's producthouse.com. You'll find it there. So PRODUCT house spelled differently. It's HAUS.com. And I can send the link so you can put it somewhere.
That's amazing. I love it. I think I have something to turn sellers to when they ask me difficult questions, which I have no answers to. I think this was brand new information. I am pretty sure we've had nothing like this in any of the podcasts that I have heard before, because this is the real shit that people actually go through and they don't have answers to. Pardon my language. And I thank you for just like coming in and giving answers to how people are today finding answers to these questions, and how they have support, and now that they have tools that they can turn to to find answers to some of these questions. Perfect. I think great conversation today. Any parting notes for the sellers out there that are listening to you, sellers or agencies?
Yeah. I mean, well, I guess I wrote a couple things down before this when I was thinking about it, but I guess the first one's like kind of going back to what I said earlier. But if you're kind of a new or an experienced seller, like understanding where you're at and what you want out of your Amazon business is really important, and that comes back to kind of that current state analysis thing. But like, is this a side hustle to you? Did you burn the ships and you went all in, and you're just getting started with no revenue, but you're all in on it, or you're already selling but trying to get to the next level, doing it on the side maybe, and you're trying to make it so that it replaces your full-time income. I think that's really important. And obviously knowing what your lifestyle is, if you've got a family and kids and a mortgage, or are you a 23-year-old who has way too much time on their hands. That's something I wish I had really thought about more when I was younger. And then I think know where you want to go, and it normally ends up taking longer, and yeah, information overwhelm. So I guess just to touch on that one last time, like, I think the best feedback or tips I've ever gotten are like, just find 2 or 3 people that in the like Amazon industry, or maybe if you're just looking for a specific thing like advertising, there's so many people that put out content. So find 2 to 3 that you resonate with, or that you really like, or that you implemented a tactic and it worked really well. And then try to kind of just focus on learning from them. And, because otherwise it's so easy to just take in, oh my gosh, I have 5 million strategies that are all saying slightly different things. And I think that can cause analysis paralysis for a lot of people. So, and the one last piece I guess would be, ideally try to find someone that is selling on Amazon and is a little bit further along than you, that can maybe be a mentor, and if possible someone that's maybe right at your level, so you guys can kind of challenge each other a little bit, and you can find people on the internet or at conferences. So anyway, those were just my thoughts.
And I think they are applicable to, when you were talking, sorry, I'm going to complete my thought. They are applicable to everyone. I mean, they're applicable to me as a SaaS business owner, right? So when you were talking about those points, I could resonate to each one of them. I think those are great advice for sellers as well as SaaS founders. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for that. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for coming in and really adding value with first-hand information, which I had never heard before, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to benefit from that. If you have not checked out producthaus.com, please do. I'm going to put in the link in the comment section below, and you should definitely go and check this out. Like Ben said, if there's one thing that can help you in removing information overload and just getting straight to the answer, ChatGPT has solved it, and I think Product House can solve it further for you when it comes to specifically seller support questions. So thank you so much, Ben.
Yeah. Thank you so much for
And absolutely, thank you. I'm going to put you out stage for a minute and then do a closing. All right, that was Ben Smith. I think he came in with a lot of good advice for sellers of literally all stages in their Amazon business, and then telling them how they can navigate through their Amazon journeys based on where they are, what are the kind of pitfalls they can avoid, and what are the kind of support systems that are already available in the market today to help them navigate this journey. So, thank you so much, Ben, once again. That's it from us. Thank you so much for sticking around. We're going to be back next week with a new guest and a lot of new learnings. Until then, happy advertising.